one can think about policy engagement in two different ways. One is sort of the nitty-gritty kind of way. So let me give you an example. We're doing some research with the government of Kerala. There's an agency called the Energy Management Center, and their remit is to basically, find ways to save energy, right, and lower costs. So they are running a program in which in childcare centers all over the state, they're basically handing out electric stoves. And the idea is that basically the children in these daycare centers, the teachers and teachers' assistants cook a meal and prepare some meals, 3 meals actually, but one full meal. And they use gas for the cooking. And so that's a drain on the Kerala government's finances. And so they want to reduce those costs, and they think they can do that with electricity. And the timing is good because the meal is happening in the middle of the day, and that's when solar power is cheap and readily available. So now, so they're rolling this out. There are 33,000 of these daycare centers in Kerala. And so they asked us to, basically monitor this. And so we started collecting data. And one of the things that we found just by surveying the teachers in these, after they had handed out some of these stoves in some of these daycare centers, that it turned out that a lot of the teachers didn't use the stoves. They're just still lying there in their boxes on a shelf in the daycare centers. And so we asked them, well, why? And so there were a number of reasons, right? Something to do with the wiring, something to do with, whether the bill will be reimbursed and this and that. So all kinds of things which sort of vary in different places. And so we went back and we told them that, while some of these are being used as you had hoped, but some of them are not. And these are some of the difficulties, and these are some of the things for you to watch out for. So, that's kind of useful because they can then hopefully do some course corrections and make the program more effective. And then, of course, you can do some formal econometrics, and look at the impacts and so on. But it's a moving kind of thing. So as the rollout proceeds, because we've told them from early stages that here's how you can do it better, then one can go on as time passes and roll out. Hopefully things will get better and we'll see larger effects as we go further out. So that's kind of it's a sort of nitty-gritty kind of thing. And I think there, we're sort of being helpful. We're being helpful because it's typically not, these government agencies, they typically don't spend too much time on monitoring and figuring out how effective something is. They say, okay, here's an idea, they do some informal kind of scoping and so on, and then they start rolling things out. And then they don't go and do systematic surveys, right? And if you don't talk to enough people, you won't pick up these problems. So at a very basic level, it's not something that you need a PhD to do. In fact, the agency could have done it itself. It's just that that's not where their incentives and their energy and their, thing is aligned. So it's sort of helpful for them to engage with academics who are in the habit of asking questions. So that's, I think, one level at which, and there are many such studies which many researchers are doing. Rohini Pandey gave a talk at the ISI a few months ago in which he described a program in Bihar where they, it's a similar kind of thing. They gave the government very useful information on how to improve a particular program. So that's one kind of policy engagement, and I think that's useful. But in some sense, I would say, I think personally, I find that not uninteresting, and it's useful, but it's not, There's the other kind, I think, which is that where you do you do research on issues which connect to policy. I mean, they have some relevance, but they're not directly relevant, right? I mean, you do, and you engage with policymakers. You know, occasionally you talk about, they tell you what they're, you know, whatever they're doing and what they're interested in, and you talk about, you know, what kind of research that they might find interesting. And over time, one kind of builds up relationships with some people, and there it's different. It's not that, okay, I did this research project and I discovered this, and then you can use it like this. I mean, that happens sometimes, but I don't think that's where a lot of what's valuable from academia going into policymaking is. It's more that we have a sense of what the literature on this whole topic is about. It's not that I wrote this paper or whatever. It's we have a sense of what the literature says. We have a sense of what's been learned on this. And at some point, the policymakers ask you a question, and they want an answer yesterday. And the reason that you can be helpful at that point is because a lot of researchers have done a lot of research, and you have a sense of what, you know, what's a useful answer to a question like that. And in order to be able to give a useful answer, you have to have been obviously an academic who's engaged in the academic pursuit and have a sense of the literature. But you also have to have a sense of how that knowledge can be translated into something that's useful for the policymaker at that juncture. And as Jonathan said, that's something that takes relationship building. It doesn't, there has to be a certain level of trust. The policymaker has to trust you and feel that you are going to give them an answer which is useful to them, and that you're not just basically trying to self-promote your particular whatever paper or study or whatever it is. So I think those are the, well, I would say one more thing. In India, anyway, the government is, you know, one of the things that's characteristic of people who are fairly high up at government levels, at the levels at which policy decisions are taken, often have too many responsibilities. So they tend to be overwhelmed by day-to-day things. There isn't enough time to sort of think and plan and so on. That's frequently the case in people in executive positions. And so you tend to be asked questions into the certain very short fuse, right? You can't go and then do research at that point to give them an answer. It just isn't enough time. So it has to be based on stuff that you've already done and other people have already done that you're aware of.